normally your element will be, the name is only quick sort, but it is not as fast as the algorithm will be little bit fast since it occurs a divide and conquer method. But while explaining or by deriving or by manual calculation, actually this takes a lot of time. Deriving manually only, but algorithm wise, this recursion applies, recursion procedure gets applied for this quick sort. So what will happen is, normally when you take an entire array, like similar to your binary search, but not binary search divide, same thing concept is applied here also. This will be divided, your entire array. Here the division will not happen equally. The division will happen based upon your pivot element only. In binary, all division happens equally. Both the entire array splits into equal halves. In merge also, your entire array splits into equal halves. But for your quick sort alone, it will not split into equal halves, rather than based upon the pivot. There is an element called, like your insertion sort, you are taking a key element, right? Like that, here there is an element called pivot element. So here we tell it as a pivot. So pivot element, normally they take the first element as the pivot. In case if they have not given in some programs or in some questions even, they themselves will give, you can take this as a pivot. Rarely, they give that, very rarely. But the thing is, if it is not given, always the first element will be taken as the pivot element. Okay, so the first element will be taken as the pivot element, and that will start its comparison one by one. How this will be sorted is, in one side it will take all the elements lesser than the pivot, and the other half it will take all the elements greater than the pivot. So I'll tell you the logic now. See calculations now, how it happens actually. So a random element x is taken, that's called as pivot. And for example, if x is in this diagram, x is over the violet color, it's given x. So always when the pivot element will be replaced in the middle, once you have found all the elements, lesser to pivot will lie on the left hand side, greater to pivot will lie on the right hand side. So finally, the arrangement will be like left side one group of elements will be there, right side one group of elements will be there. So this is a diagrammatic representation only. Now I'll start with an example which makes you more clear. So you are going to select a pivot element. Pivot element, here I am taking the first one as first element is here is 26, is acting as the pivot here. So what this 26 will be done is, this will be compared with the next element. You are going to use two markers or 2 pointers, I can tell you, I and j, two variables otherwise. So what will happen is, this I will be keeping on incrementing until you find the greater element than the pivot. Okay. So if it is less, that is, if it is till that I will be incremented. If your element is, see for example, I'll tell you, first I is now pivot element will be the first element, that is a of I, a of 0 or whatever it is. Now your I will be your next element to the pivot. Initially your I will be the pivot itself. After that you have to increment. When coming to the code, I'll tell you. But first know how the concept is applied, then only you will be knowing how actually the coding also will help you to in it. So you have to group it into, I have taken 26 as the pivot. So my elements 26 lesser to 26, whatever elements on the right side of the array has to come in the left side, and my greater elements has to come, greater than the pivot has to come on the right side. So in this, I am going to start the process now. Now 36 is the two markers I use. So here we are comparing the pivot element with the left of the group with each element by incrementing I and decrementing j. That is the procedure actually. So if you find an element, when you increment j, if you find an element greater than the pivot, and when you decrement j, until that, if it finds an element greater than the pivot, and if it is lesser, it keeps on incrementing. Otherwise, if it finds an element, it will stop there and it will start to decrement the j. J also, when it is greater than the pivot, it does not cast, but when it is less than the element, what happens is it gets swaps. I and j gets swaps over here. So this is what happening here. So this is what happening over here, where your 33 and 22 will be first interchanged, and then 35 and 12 will be next interchanged. Then again I will be incremented to 29, and j I will be incremented to 29. So I will take the place of 29 and j will take the place of 19. So now again you can see that 29 is greater. So what it will do, 19 is lesser. So again the swapping happens. So 19 comes this side and 29 goes on the other side. So once again, when this happens over here, see here, all have gone now from other side. We have reached 22, 12 and 29 has come. Now what happens? Your I is in 29 and your j is in 19. Now again your I will be incremented and it will go here, and your j will move this side. So in one way I can tell you that if I and j crosses, that means your j will be greater than I. Your index of j, not your I will be great. Index of I will be greater than j. In that case, or in other word, I can tell both crosses. In that case, you have your comparison will stop. And finally, what you have to do is, see here, in this case, you see I is in, see very carefully, I is in 29 and j is in 19. Now both get swapped and j comes, takes the place of 19 and I takes the place of 29. Now what happens is, when it swaps or when it crosses together, both I and j crosses together, or your index of I is greater than j, in that case you have to stop the comparison or stop the iteration, and what you have to do is you have to exchange this pivot element with this j and the pivot. That is what, that will only break your array into two not equal halves but two halves. That's all. It will break it into, it will divide it into two subarrays. So how this division happens is, keep it in mind, your I will be keeping on incrementing until your pivot element is greater, and then when it is greater, it will swap with the lesser element in the right side. So lesser elements will come to the left side and greater elements of pivot will go to the right side. When this happens, the iteration also stops. That is, when I and j crosses, the iteration stops. And how to break it into two is, your pivot element and this j will be now swapped together. So see here, 26 and 19 will be swapped. So pivot element now acts as a separate part. And now there are two groups, you see. This is a left group and this is a right group. Now comparatively, when you take this pivot, you see all the elements lesser than pivot will be in the left side, and all the elements greater to pivot are on the right side. Now once again what will happen? With this, the procedure is not yet over. Now see here, now this will be again repeated recursively. This is only called as recursion procedure. Now here one of the element 19 will be taken as the pivot. This right side will remain the same now. After that only we will process the right side. Now this alone. Now 19 will be taken as the pivot and it will be compared with, I will be compared with the 22. I is now 22. 19 and 22 will be compared and 22 is greater. So what happens? I will be now marked over here. It will not increment. It will mark, it will stand in this position. Now j will be here in this position, j plus 1. So now j takes the value of 12. Now 12 is compared with 19. Now 12 and 19 are compared now. What happens? It is lesser. When it is lesser, the group has to be changed. This has to come here and this has to go here. So 12 will come this side and 22 will go the other side. Now again I will be incremented. J will only about left group I am telling. I am not all going for the right group. So in this case again j and I will be crossing each other. You can see j and I will cross each other. So what happens? 12 will be here, 22 will be here. When j and I crosses, you have to interchange the pivot and the j is now 12 now actually when we after interchanging. J will be 12 and 22 will go this side. Now this pivot and j will be interchanged. So what happens? 12 will come here and 19 will come here. So 19 will be now standing as a separate element over here. 12 is separate over here. 22 is separate over here. Now you can see that all the things are sorted. Separate in the sense, for representation only we have given as a separate. but actually that is not a separate element. But now see here, all have been sorted now. Now only it will come to the right group itself. So when it comes to the right group, again 29 will be your pivot element. 29 will be compared with 33. It is greater. So again, it will be standing. Now again, it will see that 35 on the other side. It is also greater. Now it is not lesser. If it is lesser to 29, this number will move over here. Swapping will be done. But all are greater. So just comparison alone will be done. And finally, this side and this side, everything is in a sorted order.